Unfiltered, Donald Trump greets Vladimir Putin with red carpets and jet flyovers in Alaska. But after all the pomp, the summit delivered nothing, echoing Trump's long record of bad deals and bankruptcies. Americans are stuck in place. Fewer people are changing homes, jobs, or cities, and economists warn the nation's trademark mobility is grinding to a halt. In health, doctors say obesity sharply raises the risk of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and early death. Yet, fat activists are pushing back against the surge of weight loss drugs like Ozempic. We'll also look at screen time. New Yorkers spend more than 6 hours a day on their phones, scrolling more than 80 miles a year with their thumbs. And the online right claims liberals are furious about sorority rush dances. The Atlantic shows the outrage is imaginary, but the clicks and profits are very real. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Okay, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. Let's dive in with story one. Trump and Putin, another deal gone nowhere. The Alaska summit between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin ended as many of Trump's so-called negotiations do. Lots of spectacle, little substance. After red carpets, jet flyovers, and a choreographed limo ride, the two leaders emerged with no ceasefire, no peace plan, just vague talk of progress and understanding. That outcome echoes Trump's record as a deal maker. Despite branding himself as a master negotiator, his business history tells the opposite story. Trump's Atlantic City casinos, including the Taj Mahal, Trump Palace, Trump Castle, filed for bankruptcy multiple times, costing investors and workers billions. Trump Airlines collapsed within years, while Trump University was shut down after a $25 million fraud settlement. Even his 2018 government shutdown over border wall funding ended with no wall money. His much publicized North Korea talks produced no denuclearization, and his trade war with China raised tariffs that hammered U.S. farmers without securing lasting concessions. Let's remember, according to Bloomberg and the New York Times, if Trump had simply taken the fortune he inherited from his father and invested it in a basic S&P 500 index fund, by 2016, he would have been worth more money, far more than he is today, or at least by the end of 2016 when he entered politics. In other words, doing nothing would have beaten his entire lifetime of deal making. The Putin summit just adds to that track record. Pomp, promises, and in the end, nothing. Okay, so what's the real message here? Donald Trump meeting with Putin was a lot of spectacle, and it was an unmitigated disaster. The United States has taken a war criminal, seen as a pariah around the world, and put him on a pedestal, give him status, made him seem like a co-equal to the President of the United States. That is sticking it in the eye of people who believe in democracy and sovereignty everywhere. Let's dig a little deeper here. Donald Trump has made a nice career for himself, positioning himself as the master deal maker, the art of the deal. He's supposed to be so great at making deals. And what if there's really only good deal he's good at making? The deal of suckering people like you and me into believing he's a deal maker, a negotiator. When you look at his track record, it is failure, 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 failure. Yes, he did talk his way into the White House, not once, but twice. So I'll give him credit for that. But the idea of actually negotiating important things to help make the world a better place, no, there's absolutely no track record of that whatsoever. Now, this is particularly scandalous because I believe history will show this is worse than Neville Chamberlain appeasing Hitler. Vladimir Putin was the clear aggressor, invading Ukraine, violating international law. Putin is an international war criminal. And here is Trump treating him like a co-equal, in some ways superior, buddy. Vladimir, my good friend. I mean, This show is not about conspiracy mongering, but I will tell you there are an awful lot of people who are very close to Trump and have worked with him closely, who sincerely believe and have gone on record as saying they believe Putin has something on Trump. I'm not getting into the whole Russia influence, and there clearly was Russian preference in the presidential campaign in 2016 and in 2024. Let's leave that issue aside. A lot of very serious people do believe it's not necessarily a P tape. I'm not suggesting that. But there's something that Putin has on Trump, and Putin continues to essentially hold Trump in the palm of his hand. Any other president, Republican or Democrat, would treat Putin like he's the pariah, the international pariah he is. And Trump continues to give him respect. He continues to do a reset, continues to put him on a pedestal, continues to talk down to Zelensky, our ally in democracy, our European ally. And it's utterly bizarre and baffling. If a Democrat did something like this, they would be impeached by noon, tarred and feathered, and exiled from the country. I do truly believe that. So what's the message here for you and for me? Well, if you're going to be a negotiator, you have to have some core set of principles of what you actually want. It does seem as though Trump wants nothing more than to be on TV, to be seen doing something important, to be seen doing something presidential. He doesn't seem to have any sense of core values, which is if we're going to live in a modern, interconnected global society, one country can't simply start sending soldiers over a border, sending bombs over a border and saying, we want your country. We don't want Canada doing that to the United States, nor would they. We don't want Mexico coming over the border with guns and tanks taking over Texas, nor would they. Why is it so hard for Trump to understand that the Ukrainians do not want Russians coming in and taking over their country? It's truly a bizarre situation. And the fact that more people are outraged by Trump's nonsense continues to be a mystery, and I would say a blight on the American people in terms of our reputation around the world. So at some point, the chickens have to come home to roost, I do believe. If you keep telling everyone you're a great negotiator and you never deliver, at some point it has to settle in. Maybe we were fooled. Maybe we were taken in. I would hope so, but let's not forget that Donald Trump actually lost more jobs as president in his first term than any president since Herbert Hoover. That's right, almost a century. And there's a collective amnesia over America that happened. Now you can say, well, but TJ, that's not fair. There was a pandemic. Well, guess what? There was a pandemic, and other nations tried to prop up their economy by giving more subsidies to individuals and businesses, which is what Biden did. And yet the very same people who say Trump shouldn't get any penalty at all for massive unemployment happening under his term are the first ones to say, well, of course, Biden deserves blame for inflation happening during the pandemic, even though it happened at a much greater level in most other countries. So you simply can't, if you're intellectually honest, have it both ways. Look, I hope things get resolved in the Ukraine. If for somehow, like the blind squirrel getting a nut occasionally, the broken clock being right twice a day, if somehow Trump stumbles onto something that comes to an agreement where there's not only a ceasefire, but an actual peace, and a peace that respects the sovereignty of Ukraine, I'll be in favor of it. But so far, it seems like he's intent on doing nothing but sucking up to a fellow dictator, Vladimir Putin, and it's un-American, it's unprecedented, and unfortunately, it is the new world we live in. More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Is America stuck in place? According to the Wall Street Journal, Americans are moving less than ever, whether to new homes, new cities, or even new jobs. Only 7.8% of people moved in 2023. That's the lowest level since the census started keeping records in 1948. Families like the Regis in New Jersey are trapped in homes too small for their growing kids, while older couples like the Rafatos can't downsize because no one is selling. This is according to a major story in yesterday's Wall Street Journal. The job market tells the same story. Recent graduates apply for hundreds of positions with little success. Even when offers come, many turn them down because moving is too costly or risky. Economists warn that this frozen mobility is dragging down productivity and wages. As one University of Chicago professor put it, expensive housing and stalled relocation are a big deal in so many dimensions. America's dynamism, once its hallmark, is quietly grinding to a halt. Okay, so what's the real message here? America isn't becoming frozen. People freeze, stay in their own neighborhoods. They stay in their own jobs. They're stuck. They are becoming more and more risk averse. This is a huge problem for a society that wants to be growing and dynamic. And part of it is housing policy. Part of it is just our own belief that, I have to own a home or I'm not a real person. And that's keeping you frozen in one place, unable to take opportunities in new cities. This is a problem. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. This is, I mentioned, a major Wall Street Journal story out this week. Some interesting statistics. In the years 1950s and the 60s, 20% of American families moved each year. Now, you could say that's too much, but only 7.8% moved in the most recent year where data was available. Now, I did just move in the last 2 weeks. I could tell you it is no fun to move, but there is a real problem when people feel stuck. Now, I was fortunate enough when I finished college in North Carolina way back in 1985, I could just move to New York City. Now, New York City was expensive then, and my first job was only $5 an hour. But I was able to split a 1-bedroom apartment with a roommate, and it was, I can't remember, it was $700 a month, or mine was half of $700 a month, but still very, very inexpensive. You're not going to find any apartment for $700 a month in a major metropolitan area like New York City in America today, even accounting for inflation. So it is a real problem where people starting off their career don't feel like they can go to that big city, whether it's Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, or Seoul in your country, or London. So that's one problem. Another problem is so many people have gotten suckered into this belief that it's always better to own your home. Well, it's not. Now, you could say I'm a hypocrite. I did just buy a home. I have been very happy for the vast majority of my life not owning homes, having the freedom and the flexibility of renting, which then allows me to take other opportunities. When I moved to New York City, I didn't buy an apartment. I certainly couldn't have afforded one. But because after only 2.5 months, the best job offer for me took me all the way to Anniston, Alabama, a very small town in the rural South, I was able to do that. I was able to follow a job opportunity, advance my career. Too many people are stifling their careers because they're like, well, I have a home. I can't sell it for more than what I paid for it, or I can't make a profit. People have this mistaken notion that you're somehow owed a huge profit, a huge return on your investment when you buy a house. Well, no, you're not. People lose money all the time on houses. And this is keeping people frozen in their careers. Now, let's look at it from a societal standpoint. Public policymakers, and this is being addressed in the big cities like New York in the current political campaign, policymakers have to do more to make housing affordable. And in much of the rest of the country, more has to be done in terms of zoning laws to make it okay to have multi-level housing, more apartment buildings, high rises. They've got to make it available so that you can have shared units, duplexes, triplexes, apartments. This idea that everyone has to have a standalone home in America on a half acre, or some communities where I used to live in Long Island, you had to own an acre. It's absolutely devastating to mobility in our country. And it's destroying a lot of potential productivity. It's destroying long-term potential wealth for people, and it needs to change. Now, let's look at this from your perspective, because this show, Filtered, is about looking at top news stories and filtering it through the lens of not only communication skills, but personal development skills to help you be more successful in your own life. Everyone is in different phases of their life. I'm in a phase of my life where I can live anywhere. I've got that luxury. I can fly to clients. I connect with people online through training, speeches, workshops, and things like this, online media. So I am kind of fortunate at this stage of my career, but I've been working for more than 40 years. If you are just starting out, I urge you, you need to give some thought to being mobile and going to a community where people really value people with your skills. If you're absolutely fascinated with technology and artificial intelligence, get to San Francisco Bay Area. That's where the greatest minds are. That's where the greatest startups are. There are more billion-dollar startups in about a 6-mile range there than in entire continents. So go there. If you are interested in media, publishing, advertising, PR, and a lot of the arts, somehow figure out a way of getting to New York City. If you have to live with 8 other roommates in a 3-bedroom place and eat ramen noodles at this stage of your life, it's likely to be the best investment you could ever make. If you're a musician, you may want to seriously think about going to Los Angeles or Berlin, perhaps. Keep your options open so you can surround yourself with people who get you, who support you, who are doing startups, who are doing projects where they want to work with you and you want to work with them. I understand in the modern world of the internet, you don't necessarily have to. James Clear, the most successful writer about habits and personal development, arguably ever, or at least in the last quarter of a century, is still living in Ohio, in Columbus, I believe, where he grew up and has family and friends. Power to him. That's great. It's worked out well for him. But it doesn't, we can't all write books that sell 25 million copies, okay? Most of us are products of our environment. And your current environment might not be the best for your career. Am I saying career is all that matters and you have to abandon all your family and friends and follow the almighty dollar no matter what? No, that's not what I'm saying. But be careful what you're really valuing. If you're valuing your hometown because this is where you have the most joy in your life and friends and family, that's one thing. But to say, I can't move or I don't want to move because it's risky or because I don't want to live in a smaller house or apartment, that can really stifle your career and kill it before it gets started. So I'm urging you, think about flexibility and mobility, especially early in your career. Yeah, you can do all sorts of things online, but there's nothing like face-to-face meetings with people, with mentors, with people who know more than you do about the career you've been in. Early in my career, certainly in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time around very successful politicians, people 30, sometimes 40 years older than I was, who really had a lot of wisdom about careers, success, the world, politics, and the media. And I'm glad I did. So I'm urging you, think about change, think about risk. Scott Galloway and a lot of other commentators have pointed this out. Your potential for long-term success is really just a function of your appetite for risk. The more you risk, the more you fail, the more likely you are to ultimately succeed. Play it safe. Don't move. Don't switch careers. Don't start a new business. Don't start a job. You won't have much risk, but you will also have very little reward. So please think about that. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. Issue 3, the health cost of extra weight. The Wall Street Journal reports that fat activists are pushing back against the rise of weight loss drugs like Ozempic. Tigris Osborne of the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance says, quote, Ozempic is 100% making things worse for us. It's created an even louder public narrative that you could just solve all your problems by taking this magical drug. Others, like longtime activist Marilyn Wan, warn that, quote, people think that if everyone can just take this expensive, dangerous drug, we can get rid of fat people. Doctors counter with data. Obesity triples the risk of type 2 diabetes and raises the odds of heart disease, stroke, and high blood pressure. It contributes to at least 13 different types of cancers, from breast to colon cancer. It worsens sleep apnea, kidney disease, and osteoarthritis, and drives fatty liver disease. On average, obesity shortens life expectancy by 8 to 10 years. For physicians, this isn't stigma, it's science. Okay, so what's the real message here? Nobody wants to say fat people are bad. I'm not saying that. Nobody's saying that. But the idea that activists supporting fat people are now saying it's horrible that people want to lose weight, whether they're using Ozempic or anything else, there's something really messed up about that. When you are obese, make no mistake about it, you are on average reducing your lifespan 8 to 10 years. This is not a fashion choice. This is a life and death decision. Anything you can do to get your weight to a non-obese level, in general, you're adding years to your life, and that should be seen as a good thing. Okay, let's dig a little deeper here. I'm all in favor of people saying, I don't want to hide my life. I don't want to be ashamed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was certainly considered shameful to be of a different race, to be homosexual. People felt like they had to hide that. in my lifetime, my own marriage would have been unconstitutional because in the United States, an interracial marriage was considered inappropriate and illegal in a lot of states. So, look, I get not wanting to just say, well, because these people say it's bad, then I'm going to say it's good as a defense measure. I get that. But when it comes to death, and that's really, unfortunately, what the modern American diet does. SAD, they call it SAD, the standard American diet, very high on highly processed foods, super processed foods, lots of sugar, added sugar, processed carbohydrates, lots of salt. It's designed to get you to eat nonstop. It creates obesity, and that generates, as I mentioned in the beginning of the segment, it generates more than a dozen different types of cancers in your body, or increases your chances of getting cancer. It's one thing to say you're not thin enough to be on this cover of this magazine because a fashion editor doesn't like it. That's not the issue here. No one is suggesting you have to be thin enough to be a fashion model. I'm not suggesting that. But it's another thing to say, because I'm wildly obese, and I want to feel good about myself, other people are bad for wanting to do something where they take control over their health. Now, my preference, and I think the preference of most people in the medical community, is to not use drugs like Ozempic and these inhibitors that make you less hungry, but to actually eat real food. I think the best description ever of Ozempic and Wegovy and the NLP inhibitors is it's an artificial solution to an artificial problem. Now, I'm going to say something here. It's going to upset some people, but it is medically true. It's actually extraordinarily difficult to become obese if you largely eat whole foods and unprocessed foods. If you eat an apple, you're likely to get full. You're not going to want to eat 6 apples. If you eat an apple sugary smoothie drink with added sugar, you can suck down the equivalent of 6 apples. It's all the artificial processing, the artificial sugars, salts, processed carbohydrates that make us eat. Before the advent of highly processed foods, obesity was extraordinarily rare, not only in the United States, around the world. And we see it every day rolled out in other countries. Number of years, 10, 20 years after highly processed foods invade their grocery stores and their convenience stores, what do you know? All the kids are overweight and obese, and it just percolates throughout the culture. And average life expectancy can literally go down, as has happened in the United States. So this is a serious problem. And I think well-meaning people who are not trying to make anyone feel bad or shame anyone have to realize we do nobody any favors by normalizing unhealthy behavior. I don't criticize, I don't say, you alcoholic, aren't you a bad person? Most people would say, or I wouldn't say, oh, you're an alcoholic, good, embrace your lifestyle, drink more, drink more. Most people would say, hey, you're a good person. We like you, we want to help you. How can we help you drink less alcohol or get off the bottle? I think that's what most people would do if they have a family member who is an alcoholic. They don't celebrate the drinking. Wow, way to go. He drank 5 bottles of wine today. We don't say that. We don't also say you don't deserve to live because you drink. What we try to do is solve the health problem. Someone who drinks 5 bottles of wine a day and then goes back to 0 bottles of wine is still a person, but they're probably a healthier person who's going to live a longer time. People who drink 5 chocolate macchiatos with 2,000 grams of sugar in it every day and are obese are probably going to live a lot longer if they go to drinking water and they cut out all the added sugar and all the extra added calories. So Look, it is a real problem when people say, "Ooh, I don't like the way this person looks. They're disgusting." Yeah, I get it. That can't be pleasant for anyone. I'm not suggesting we go to that level. But the idea that focusing on something, if someone's shooting heroin every day and it's a family member, and you say, look, you got to go to a methadone clinic and get off that. You're not shaming the person. Are we saying that's heroin shaming? Oh, aren't you a bad person? You're heroin shaming. No, we'd say you're trying to save that person's life. And the fact is, a lot more people die every year, depending upon your estimate, between hundreds of thousands and millions of people around the year die prematurely from obesity. A lot more die from that than do die from heroin. So there is such a thing as shame that is legitimate. I happen to think it is a shame anytime someone dies 8 to 10 years sooner than they could have, simply because they bought into this myth that the way to happiness is more Little Debbie's and more nachos and more gallons of cheese and more Cheesecake Factory 5,000 calorie meals. That is a real shame. And it's time, I think, more people realize it. So, not trying to be mean to the fat activist, but and I'm not suggesting Ozempic and Wegovy are perfect. There are a lot of side effects, but you got to compare it to the alternative. The alternative for staying obese and nothing changing quite often is literally death. Issue 4, stuck in the scroll. The New York Post reports that New Yorkers spend an average of 6 hours and 12 minutes a day on their phones. Add it all up, and that's the equivalent of scrolling more than 81 miles a year with your thumbs. That's right, 81 miles a year. This is according to a story published in the New York Post. Researchers say the constant pings, dings, and notifications create what they call a nonstop loop of distraction. On average, Americans check their phones 58 times a day. Half of those checks happen during work hours and half within 3 minutes of the last one. All that digital task switching has consequences. Experts estimate it cuts productivity by as much as 40% and costs the global economy $8.8 trillion a year. Nationally, the average American spends more than 6.5 hours on screens daily, scrolling the distance of 86 miles a year. Arizona tops the list at nearly 9 hours a day. I don't know what's going on in Arizona, with thumbs traveling 150 miles a year. Okay, so what's the real message here? We got to give this up. The average American is scrolling with their thumb 86 miles a year. This is a weapon of mass distraction. And while I'm happy you're watching me on it right now, the number one thing you can do for your health, your sanity, your productivity is turn the button off. Literally turn the power off for huge chunks of your day every day. Okay, that's the real message. Let's dig a little deeper here. How do we do that? Am I suggesting you got to throw your phone away? No, I'm really not. Can you use a smart? Am I saying you have to go to a flip phone? No. But you've got to get control over it. One of the things I do, and I started doing this about 7 years ago, is I literally turned my phone off and went for a walk 1 hour a day. And that's where I get all the best ideas for my new online courses, for books, for content for you. Oh, but TJ, that's crazy. What if someone needed me? What if there's an emergency? Well, guess what? Human beings have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer. And we've only had these things cemented to our hands for the last 20 years or so. If you think the world will not get along without having instant access to you, you are sorely mistaken. You are filled with hubris. And look, I'm as hubristic as anyone else, but even I know the world can survive without getting a hold of TJ for an hour. The second you turn your phone off, you now have access to something that could give you great insight, great wealth, great calmness. I'm talking about being alone with your own thoughts. If you're staring at this every second of the day, you're not giving yourself any time to think. And the most successful people in the world, doesn't matter if it's Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos, whoever your role model is, they get successful because they think new thoughts on how to create new businesses, new products, new services. If you're not doing that, you're robbing yourself of your ultimate potential. You're also destroying human relationships. I don't know how many times I've seen a friend, or we haven't seen each other in several months. We're sitting down and they're only half there. They got to swipe left or swipe right, or however you swipe on the singles apps, I don't know. But they're not fully there. And let me go right now on record as saying this concept of you're going to dinner with people for a social time and even putting your cell phone on the table, it's obnoxious. I understand most people do it. And I understand that makes me a social outlier. But if you want to be more present and having real conversations with real people that's meaningful, put your phone away. There's been a lot of scientific research, you can Google it, that simply having a cell phone on and visible distracts the brain. You're not as present. You're not as able to really think clearly, to engage another human being. And that's why I do recommend, I certainly try to practice this, any dinner conversation at home, with family, or out, phones have to be put away. And don't even get me started about a phone in the bedroom. If you have your phone in your bedroom, unless you're living in a studio apartment, it's absolute insanity. Oh, but TJ, I use my cell phone as my alarm clock. Guess what? You can buy an alarm clock for $7. I think your ability to think clearly and to get a good night's sleep and to do everything you can to improve your health is more important than having your cell phone there. Well, TJ, I have a family member who may need medical attention. It's urgent that I am available 24/7. Okay, I thought of that, and I recently came up with a solution myself, an old-timey landline with a lot of people with your internet package or cable package. A lot of times you can get it for free, and you can go buy a cheap phone for $8, or it's at most $8 a month. If you're telling me routine, regular sleep is not worth an extra $8 or $10 a month for a phone package, I think you really seriously need to evaluate your budget of what you do spend money on. Because if you're watching this, I'm not going to make the assumption that you're wealthy, although we do have a pretty upscale audience for this. I am going to make the assumption you can probably afford some form of a landline. Fatima has joined us, and I'm sorry I missed you earlier. Fatima, we're talking about a new study that shows that the average American is scrolling with their thumb about 86 miles a year because they're spending so much time on their phone. And it's a problem. It's rotting our brain. And Fatima, I'm glad you're here joining us from LinkedIn, ideally not continuing to scroll. I hope you stay with me and we can have fun together. So that's what we're talking about. I understand you have to look at your phone for work. I have to more for my work now because I do a daily news show. I do look at news online. There's no doubt about it. I am doing it in a way where it's a process. I look for top stories, something I think that would be useful to you. I bookmark it, I email it to myself, I put it in a folder, and then I try to create the whole show, script, and outline within about 15 minutes, first thing in the morning. And then I try to get away from the news. Later today, I am going to go take my daughter to a water park, and I'll hope to put my cell phone in. I probably won't put it in the car, but I'll put it in a locker and just get away for the afternoon without any cell phone distractions. I hope you can find some time in your life on a daily basis where you are consciously taking control of your attention and putting your phone away so that you can just either go for a walk and think, or get an old-fashioned pad and pen, even if it's to take notes that you then later dictate to your phone. There's something ultimately very powerful about giving your own brain time to think of ideas, reflect, without that constant urge of, oh, let me see what ChatGPT says this. Let me do a quick Google search on that, because then you're down a rabbit. Oh, they mentioned a good book. Let me buy that book now. And before you do it, your brain is off to the races, focused on other people's ideas. To be clear, other people do have good ideas. I'm hoping you feel like I have good ideas, but you need time for your ideas, and this thing will take it away from you. And forgive me, I broke my own promise. What I try to do every day is to literally turn my phone off when I spend time with you. Because even though there's a commercial break and I could do a quick peek, I don't want to lose my attention and focus for you. I don't want to see something where it's an urgent thing, and now I'm trying to race through the show thinking about this other thing instead of focusing on you. Fatima says, yes, exactly. It's a big issue. It made us so distracted and we could not focus on the main goals in our life. I want you to do exactly what Fatima has suggested. Focus on your main goals. That's what I try to do here on Filtered, which is figure out a way to not just obsess over news and doom scroll, but how to learn at least one important lesson for our own personal development, our own ability to see the world, to think more clearly, to practice better daily habits so that we can all become more successful. That is the purpose of the show. More in a moment. Hey, if you're enjoying this kind of take and want to hear more stories filtered through the lens of communication, make sure you're following the show, whether you're watching or listening. New episodes drop every single day. And if there's a little notification option where you are now, go ahead and turn it on. It helps you stay in the loop. Sorority dances, fake outrage. According to The Atlantic, sorority rush videos have become the latest so-called battlefield in America's culture wars, at least online. On TikTok, these short dance routines have been popular for years. But on Elon Musk's platform X, they're now being repackaged as proof that liberals and Democrats are supposedly furious about pretty young women in denim skirts and cowboy boots. Joe Kinsey, an editor at the sports site Outkick, reposted one video of Kappa Delta members in red, white, and blue outfits declaring, quote, "You know, the libs are seething over this." In another, he added, quote, "The purple hair lesbians have to be furious that SEC sororities are back." Those two posts alone were viewed nearly 40 million times. Yet when asked where he found evidence of left-wing outrage, Kinsey couldn't point to a single example. That's right, not a single example. His response was, quote, "I don't believe that." This playbook isn't new. The Atlantic recalls the uproar over an American Eagle ad starring actress Sydney Sweeney, something we've talked about a lot here. A handful of people speculated it hinted at eugenics, this ad, but the story blew up once commentators framed it as liberals hating a glamorous, beautiful young woman. On X, anonymous accounts such as Calico Cut Pants and Big Chungus reposted sorority clips with inflammatory captions, then reap money through Musk's revenue sharing program. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk shared one video with the caption, "Liberals are outraged," online, and asked his 5 million followers, "Do you see the difference between conservative and liberal women?" A community note clarified that women weren't identified as conservative, but the post had already racked up millions of views. The Atlantic's conclusion, there's no real outrage here, just another manufactured drama fueling clicks and profits. And I should note, fueling a partisan advantage, because only one party is getting advantage from this. So what's the real message here? When you see some story on social media, how supposedly liberals and the left and purple-haired lesbians are outraged at something, you need to dig a little deeper. The chances are nobody's outraged by it. It's a couple of right-wing activists thinking, here's how I'll stir the pot, make Democrats and centrists and anyone who disagrees with me look crazy, and make money in the process by getting clicks. And it's all absolute manufactured nonsense. Let's dig a little deeper here. There are severe political repercussions from this, because one party, and I have to give them credit for it, the modern Republican Party, is smart enough to realize, hey, most Americans are too stupid to notice if we raise their taxes, if they're poor people, if we pollute their environment, if we decimate their schools. They're not going to notice that. All we have to do is put this scary cultural issue over here and say, oh, the other guys, they want to burn the flag. The other guys want your daughter to have to go to a bathroom with a transsexual. Never mind the fact that most people have never seen a burning flag in their neighborhood or their town. Most people have not seen their own child bothered by a transsexual in a bathroom. Most people do not have a child so competitive on the swimming team that their whole career is going to be decimated if they come in second place to a transsexual swimmer. But the right understands, if you just put these hot button emotional issues that everyone can understand, everyone can understand sex, everyone can understand fear of someone different, fear of immigrants, fear of homosexuals, of transsexuals, of anything a little bit different, that you stir up outrage, you benefit your team. That's exactly what's going on here. And one of the premises of this show, Filtered, is we're going to analyze media stories like this and filter it through what's really going on, who's truly benefiting. So when you see a story like this one, where supposedly so many people on the left are outraged by good-looking sorority girls dancing, you have to ask yourself, is this really true? Have I seen a single elected official, a Democratic member of Congress or the Senate, stand up and pass a law trying to outlaw good-looking girls dancing in sororities? The answer, of course, is no. Have I seen a major thinker on the center or the left, a New York Times columnist, for that matter, someone on Twitter with 5 million followers? Have I seen any of those people attacking the idea that sorority girls should not be able to dance and be good looking? No. If you're coming to that conclusion, then you need to see what's really going on. And what's going on is you're being played. You and I are being played and manipulated to help one political party and one political agenda. Because if you can delegitimize your opponent by saying, these people are so weird, these people are so crazy, these people have values that are so bizarre to yours, we don't even have to bother talking about things like minimum wage or environmental policy or whether schools teach real science. We don't have to talk about that because these people are just beyond the pale. It's serving that agenda. And that is what is distorting so much about politics in America today, and not just America, around the world. Increasingly, we are seeing, whether it's Canada, whether it's major democracies in Europe, someone who is a centrist, someone who is a mainstream, would be considered a moderate in any other time, is being discredited by those on the right, because this is a tactic that is shared among right-wingers and authoritarians, anti-democrats around the world. They all get together in places like Hungary at conventions, and they talk about how can we discredit centrists and people we call the left, but it's really anyone to the left of us. So you can be a right of center Republican in America and these days be written off as a leftist or a rhino simply because you don't endorse every one of the extreme public policy initiatives of the far right. So I need you to be aware of it and to filter this through a reality prism. And are there odd people on all sides of the spectrum? Sure. Are there odd extreme people on far left and far right? Sure. But the people on the far right are the ones who actually hold power with these extreme views. The people on the so-called far left in America don't hold any power. And they're the ones getting all the attention, defining what centrist and mainstream moderates and certainly moderate Democrats stand for. And it is completely shifting and perverting the whole political landscape with severe repercussions for you, America, and the world. Let's take a look at some of the comments coming in. Question from LinkedIn. What is your advice to young women who want to start working from home for herself on the internet? And is she interested about e-commerce and business? So I've been started before, but didn't continue in a way of learning. So my biggest advice to anyone who wants to work from home is don't think about working from home. Think first and foremost, how are you going to create value to a customer? That's got to be your focus. I see these courses all the time and online gurus about make your home-based business, build a home-based business. There's no such thing as a home-based business. There's only one type of business that's ultimately successful, and that is a customer-based business. You got to find some skill set that the public, the customers, the marketplace respects enough to hand you money. Everything else is irrelevant. Your logo, the name of your company, the colors for your brochure, none of those things matter. Your tax structure, your corporate structure, none of those things matter until you solve one problem, and that is, who is your customer? What are you doing for them in terms of delivering a service or selling a product that they value to the point of them reaching in their pocket and giving you money? You've got to solve that problem. And so many people waste so much time about, oh, is my home office just right? And, oh, I got my LLC, my corporate structure, oh, I got my logo, I got my accountant, I got my team. All a complete waste of time if you don't solve the primary problem of any business. And that is, what is it you're actually doing that someone's going to pay for? So that is my recommendation, Fatima. I don't know your particular situation. Ask yourself, what have you done in the past that people have been willing to pay for? I don't know what it is. It could be computer coding. It could be babysitting, but somehow figure a way of doubling down on that. Again, I know nothing about the babysitting industry, but let's say you did a lot of babysitting in your community. Maybe you create a referral system where you make it easiest for parents to quickly find a last-minute babysitter, knowing you've vetted those babysitters and you have their IDs and you can deliver. I'm just tossing out an idea. Figure out what it is you want to do that makes you excited to get up. Like me, I'm excited to get up on a Saturday morning and create this show for you. And it does create a lot of economic opportunities for me as well. Fatima, I want to thank you for joining me. And I really want to thank all of you for joining me if you're watching this live on a Saturday morning. My name is TJ Walker. This is Filtered with TJ Walker, where every day we look at the top business, economic, technology, and culture stories of the day, filtered through the lens of communication skills and personal development. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow.